everybody, and welcome to Mormon Sex Info. I am so excited to have Cami Hurst with us today. This is going to be kind of a special episode because it's going to be a little bit short because we are basically asking you to participate in a survey for Cami's dissertation, which
Yay.
I'm very excited about because Cami is studying sex therapy for her PhD, which anytime anybody's doing anything like that, I'm just super thrilled about. So this is going to be an ask specifically for people who identify as women. And I'm going to have Cami talk a little bit about her project, and then we'll get into some of the weeds and details. But for the most part, we're not going to talk too much about this until the research is done and the data is in. And then I'm going to have you come back and tell us all about what you found out.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, my hands are tied a little bit, right? So with academic research, you can't really talk about what you hope you find, and you can't really talk about what your bias is, what you think you're going to find, because you don't want to taint the well. You want to actually find if what you suspect is there is there. Yeah, I'm a PhD student in clinical sexology at Modern Sex Therapy Institutes. I'm in my last year. I hope to graduate around December, and this is the final piece. I'm doing my original research, which I hope will be publishable. It'll be very exciting. I'll come back. We'll talk all about the details.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, so my study is looking at what are the psychological, emotional, sexual, and relational outcomes for women who consent to unwanted sex in their long-term relationships. So some of this research has been done before by Lucinda O'Sullivan and by Zoe Peterson, but it was only done with college-age girls, often in hookup culture. What happens if you say yes, but you're really not into it? In all of the papers, there's been this, what really needs to happen is this needs to be looked at for women in long-term relationships. And it hasn't been done yet. So I'm really thrilled that my research is original and that those in the field looking at this want this information. And so I think it'll really contribute in a powerful way to the body of literature and to the field of sex therapy.
I could not agree more.
Thank you. Yeah, I think as therapists, especially those of us who work with relationships and work with sex, we have these ideas. We're like, something's happening here, but there's not a history of sexual abuse. And I want to know what this is about. And we often have our theories as therapists, we're looking at the lifespan of female desire and things that influence it in positive ways and negative ways. But it really hasn't been examined of what are the long-term outcomes when women consent to unwanted sex in their relationships.
Right. And maybe unwanted sex, I mean, I hope it's okay if I say this, but I oftentimes refer to it as kind of like duty sex. Obligatory sex. Which can come for a variety of reasons, I'm guessing.
And those are like all the words we use in our conversation, in our relationships. We call it duty sex. We call it obligation sex. The literature in like the 90s was calling it compliance sex, where we are being sexually compliant. But Zoe Peterson started terming it consenting to unwanted sex because she wanted it to be very clear that this was a consensual experience. And when I've been asking online in various groups for participation in this study, that's been the biggest hang up, that people have a hard time understanding this idea of consenting to unwanted sex. We have a lot of ideas about it, but none of them have actually been studied with research to say, yes, this is true. But I mean, we all have ideas about it.
Well, and I think a lot of times people go straight into, well, if it's unwanted sex and it's rape or it's something like that. But the idea is that people are consenting. And so the best way I tend to explain is I consent to things I don't want to do all the freaking time. like changing poopy diapers, right? Or like cooking a dinner that I'd rather go watch Netflix, but here's my family and my kids who needs a meal, So I think a lot of us do a lot of things, especially for people that we love or we are in relationship with, that we don't necessarily want to do, but we come up with these other reasons as to why we should do them.
Yeah, I mean, Zoe Peterson she's at the Kinsey Institute doing a lot of this research right now. And that's what she's trying to do, is break this binary of it was consensual or it was abusive. you know, versus it was wanted or it was unwanted. And a lot of her work looks at how ambivalent wanting is, that you might want it for one reason, like your desire is high, but you don't want it for another because you're in a different committed relationship and this wouldn't be ethical. Or you know, there are lots of times where we want for one reason and don't want for another. And it's not binary, it's on a continuum, it's very ambivalent. Lucinda O'Sullivan's work was looking at the motivation to do it is to make the relationship better. Maybe it's okay, but if motivation is to avoid a consequence, then it might not be better. And so there's been these theories out there in the literature that I'm really trying to nail down here and get some clear research and data for.
Yeah, no, I think this is super important research, and I hope it's replicated, you know, and I hope that more and more people study this, because I do see it come up many times in many ways, and then sometimes in ways that, yeah, maybe I would deem unhealthy, and other ways that I'm very understanding as to what's going on. And so anyway, was there anything that you wanted to say in regards to like how the questions are asked, or because I know sometimes people might be like, well, what, you know, like I want to answer it a different way.
I know. It's tricky in academic research. I can't just ask what I want to ask because I have to make sure that the measures I'm using are validated. And so some people outside of an academic study might not understand that. But to know what I want to know, I need to use assessments that have already been validated for years and years and years and years. And like, if you look, this is my boom, this is huge. This is the handbook of sexually related measures. This is all the validated assessments we have to look at hundreds and hundreds of things in the science of sexual health. And so what you do is you go through and try and put together the ones that you think would be able to show you causation, or the ones that would be able to show you correlation. And you know that this has been proven and validated and approved by all the people to say it will show you what you're looking at. So it's really interesting when I post on social media and I'm saying, you guys, I need research participants, please help me. I will be forever grateful. There's a lot of feedback of like, I didn't like this question. I'm like, I know, you know, or I don't like how this is worded. I don't either. You know? But I have to work within the framework of what's validated in our field. And some of them work better for measuring this than others. You know, the criteria to participate in this research has also been questioned online, which that's kind of fun to be able to see in online groups what people are asking for. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason for all of them. So the reasons why I'm asking for these qualifications are, you know, the first one, to be a woman over 30. I had a woman who said, I'm 27, I'm not 30. Why 30? That's because the research has been done between 18 and 25. And my research, I want to be original and to show that maybe it's different for adult women, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm not judgmental at the maturity level of someone who's 27 or 28. I just had to choose a cutoff that would make my research substantially different than the previous research that's been done. Mm-hmm. So that's the reason for that one. The second is residing in the US. Well, we're looking at a lot of cultural factors. The other research has also been done within the US. If I go outside of the US, I won't be able to compare and contrast my results with the results we have as well. Mm-hmm. Because people will be able to say, there was cultural factors here. You didn't think about this, you know. And the other is speaking fluent English. And again, that's not judgmental or a bias in any way. It's, I need to make sure people understand what's being asked. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't have Google Translate on this. I need to make sure that the people taking the assessment understand it. And that's often what assessments do, is then they translate it into Spanish and see if the results are the same. And then they translate it into French and see if it's the same. I mean, we always do that with the Beck inventory and all of the assessments we use as therapists. We stage by stage translate. I'm not there yet. This is for English, fluent English speakers. And then the next one is, I'm asking for individuals who identify as a female who do not have a history of sexual abuse or violence. That one felt exclusive to some women. The reason this criteria is here is I can't have red herrings in my data, meaning I want to know the impact of this alone. And if we include those who have a history of sexual abuse or violence, I won't be able to know what's what the actual outcome of consenting to unwanted sex is. There might be all this data that looks like it's a traumatic or something, but I won't know unless I'm really zeroed into that niche. And so I had to explain that to a few people of why that criteria is there. And then the second to last is having been in a relationship for longer than 3 years.
Okay.
And that's based on the data that, during the first 2 years, we're in the limerence phase, and sexual desire is often really, really high, tends to come down after 6 months to 3 years. So we're looking at post-limerence phase in long-term committed relationships, because that's never been looked at before for this topic. It's always been short-term relationships, college-aged women. So that's where I'm trying to clear the mud, and make it less murky.
Yeah.
And the last one is, have you experienced consenting to unwanted sex in that relationship? And that just kind of blew up the groups. Nobody knew what that meant. There was a lot of this. If it was unwanted, it was coerced. And I'm allowing people to interpret this for themselves, because I'm screening throughout this. If you take the survey, you'll say, oh, she's screening here for that. Oh, she's screening here for that. Okay, she'll catch that. But I'm going to leave that up to interpretation of, has there been a time in that relationship, one or more than one, where you didn't want sex and you consented? And, you're right. You see this all the time as therapists, and often it may or may not be known to the partner. It may or may not be frequent. It may or may not include unrecognized coercion. We're screening for all of these kinds of things. So those are the requirements for the survey, and kind of why. I'm free to talk about that. I'm free to talk about the literature that's already published out there. And then, a little bit free to talk about why I'm doing the research. And one is because it hasn't been done yet, and the field has been saying, somebody do this. I can't really talk about what I think I'll find, because a lot of it's anecdotal from my experience in my office. And I don't know if that's generalizable or not. And that's what we're going to find out.
Right. Which is why I'm so excited. You're hoping to get at least 1,000 participants.
I'm really hoping for 1,000 participants, and you can help me squash the patriarchy a little bit with this. I love my entire dissertation committee, but I have an older gentleman on my committee who thought it would be very impressive if I got 150 participants. And I was like, you do not know Cami Hurst very well. Because
no, you do not, nor do you know her network.
I'm a little ambitious. I'm incredible. I take on big projects, whether I can chew them or not. And so that felt a little bit like a challenge to me. And I said, I'm going to ask for 1,000, and I'm going to blow your socks off that I can get 1,000 women who will participate, just because the research needs done without, this is completely volunteer. There will be no compensation. I have no grant happening for this research. This is all privately funded by me. And so, you can kind of help me.
And what's sad about your parameters is before you said that there shouldn't be a history of sexual abuse or sexual violence, I was like, no problem. We can get 1,000 like today. But then, realistically, sadly, this even like disqualifies me from taking the survey, right? So it's one of those things that, unfortunately, there is a lot of sexual abuse and sexual violence in so many of our histories. And so that may make it a little bit more challenging, but I totally understand your reasoning on that.
It does make it more challenging. The latest statistics are about 41% of women have a history, in their lifetime will experience sexual abuse or assault. So that leaves me, with 59%. Roundabout of women who, just with that criteria alone, would be willing to or able to participate. So it is a big ask, and I'm just completely blown over by your generosity to let me access your public reach and your public influence.
That's a no-brainer.
I am looking under some stones, right, to find people who meet all of these criteria, and I'm hoping for 1,000. So
well, let's think about this. There's probably like 10 to 15,000 people that we can access through Facebook groups and things like that. Half of them should be probably female identified. And
if they're followers of you, they're interested in sexual health,
Yeah,
so,
and then half of them, hopefully don't have this kind of a history. So that puts us at least 3,000. Come on, we can shoot for 3,000.
Nice. I love it. That'd be fantastic.
So, yeah. How long does it take to take the survey about?
It's a little long. It's taking, as I look on the back end, people are taking it between 17 and 30 minutes.
Okay.
And I think that depends on if you get to the very last measure. It's comment box where you can tell me more of your story, tell me more of your experiences, especially if the assessment didn't really assess your experience well. And so we will use whatever data we get. So even if you don't finish the survey, we'll use what we can get. I'd love it if you finish the survey, but I know I have a time commitment as a volunteer to take, maybe 30 minutes. I think the variance in the time is those who are taking longer to answer the qualitative questions at the end, and you don't have to if you don't want to. So.
Right. Okay. And it doesn't matter religious background or racial background, cultural background, anything like that, other than being in the United States. That's, and no.
Yeah.
And other than above age 30, there's no age limit, correct? Okay.
Yeah. Nope, no limit.
All right, we can do this.
Yay. So the link, I think, is in this post that you're making right now. It should take you to SurveyMonkey and walk you through. And then in January, once I have written and defended, then you can have me back on, and December, January, talk all about it once I've defended the project.
Oh, don't worry. I'm going to have you back on. We're going to talk all about it.
Awesome.
No, I think this is really important work. I think these are really good things that we need to know more information about. And like you're saying, I do think many of us do have anecdotal ideas, and yet to back that up with good evidence and research is so incredibly helpful to the people serving them in regards to trying to access good mental health treatment, good relational treatment, good sex therapy treatment. So this is amazing. I'm so glad you're doing this, Cami.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. Again, this is Mormon Sex Info. This is Cami Hurst. She's doing some really amazing research, revolutionary, quite frankly, that needs to be done around unwanted sex that is consented to. So those of us who are female, let's rise to the occasion if we meet the criteria, and 50 minutes to half an hour helping this cause. I think it's time well spent. So thank you for coming on.
Yes, thank you for the call to action, and thank you for the spotlight, and thank you for your friendship. I appreciate it.
For sure. Anytime. We'll talk soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We took the long road home, turned minutes into miles, and as the evening traveled on, the sunset bathed your smile. We stopped beneath the desert stars, wrapped in each other's arms. Was as simple as I love you, an ordinary, extraordinary truth.
It's been a long road here, a trail with tears, pain and sorrow too.
But through every storm we traveled on, lovers do. And if sometimes we fell apart, we always came back home. Was as simple as I love you, an ordinary, extraordinary truth. Some people say love is blind and forever is too long. But I see your eyes in every sunrise. Can't imagine life alone. Let's take the long road on together until we're gone. Want you by my side till the day I die and into the beyond. It's as simple as our love is. That's how I wanna go, all wrapped up in the arms of our extraordinary, it's nothing ordinary love. Ordinary. No, it's extraordinary.